I might have just solved landscape photography, and that's a crazy claim, so let me jump into the studio and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Take a look at these two images. They are both sharp from front to back, neither have blown highlights, and the composition is pretty solid in both. The only difference between these two photos is the conditions that they were taken in, which leads me to the thing that no landscape photographer seems to want to admit. Your camera settings, the fancy gear that you're using, and the location that you're shooting in adds up to maybe 20% of the end result. The other 80%, that is the conditions, the light, the atmosphere, the weather that you're shooting in. And for most landscape photographers, this is a problem because they're showing up to their shoots and just hoping for the best because they don't have an accurate way to forecast the very specific weather conditions that us landscape photographers need to be out in. They drive to a location, they walk about to find a composition, and then they find themselves staring at a dull, boring landscape, and so they end up with very dull, boring results. And that was the old way of doing landscape photography. But there is a new way. I've built something that fixes this issue for good. My name is Will, I'm a multi-award winning landscape photographer and photography coach, and if you want to start creating images like this, and this, then stick with me because I'm going to show you exactly how I now predict epic light and photogenic conditions with great accuracy before I even leave the house, and then I'm going to prove it works by forecasting a shot, going out and then showing you the very literal results. Okay, so let me explain why I'm so confident that the conditions that you're shooting in make up 80% of the impact of a landscape photo. Take a look at this image. There's nothing technically wrong with it. The focus is spot on, the exposure is correct, the composition, well, it works, but it's boring, right? It probably doesn't do much for you, and it certainly doesn't do much for me either. Now, instead, look at this photo. It's a similar kind of scene, but it comes along and it slaps you in the face. It has feeling, it has that wow emotion that most landscape photographers are chasing with their work. And the difference between these two shots isn't the camera or any other random expensive gear. It's the light. It's what the sky was doing. It was the weather conditions that turned an ordinary scene into something a bit more extraordinary. Now, for years, I've treated the weather conditions that I was going out shooting in kind of like the lottery. Sure, I'd check some weather apps. I'd see, yeah, the sky's going to be partly cloudy, and I'll go, that's probably going to work. But then I'd be driving out to my location, and I'd basically be hoping for the best rather than having confidence that nature was going to help me out with some beautiful conditions. And sometimes I'd get lucky, but most of the time, well, I wouldn't. And that would often lead me to feel disappointed with my photography. And with that disappointment in hand, when I first started out, I'd go out and watch all of these landscape photography YouTubers, and I'd get sucked into thinking that I needed that new lens or that camera or that editing tool, the things that they were pitching me every single week. I needed those things to level up my work. But after realizing that all they were doing was parroting marketing material from the big camera brands and having personally spent thousands and thousands of dollars on crap that didn't really make a difference to my photos, I committed to finding the real solution to this seemingly lack of predictability in the weather when I was going out doing my photography. And it turns out that the specific weather conditions that us landscape photographers want to shoot in aren't all that random. They're actually pretty predictable. The sun moves in ways that we can calculate, cloud layers behave in ways that we can accurately forecast. It's all about having access to the right data. It's just, until right now, making sense of all that data basically required a degree in meteorology. So I took on this challenge and I built a tool that does all of this for you. Right, so let me show you exactly what this looks like in practice. This is the Photography Explained toolkit, and it's designed to answer one question. If I go to a specific location at a specific time, am I going to get the conditions that are required to create a beautiful, epic landscape photo or not? Is it going to be a bit miserable? And to answer that question, we need to know three things. Firstly, to capture amazing sunrises or sunsets, of course, we need light. That's pretty obvious, right? But the question is the sun going to be visible on the horizon at sunset or sunrise, or is it going to be blocked by clouds? And this is where most landscape photographers, they look at the weather forecast at their location, and I used to do this as well, and I'd look at it and I'd go, oh, okay, well, it's 40% cloud cover, and so we're probably going to be fine. But the issue with forecasting your photo shoots like this is that you're forecasting 40% cloud cover above your location, not where the clouds are in relation to the sun on the horizon at sunset and sunrise. So I designed the toolkit to calculate the Earth's curvature, your altitude at that specific shooting location, then to split the cloud forecast into 3 distinct layers so we can see if the cloud is going to be blocking the sun from being visible at the horizon when we go out to take our beautiful sunrise or sunset photo. And then once you confirm that you're going to have a gap on the horizon for the light to get through, there's something else that we need to be able to predict if we're going to nail a light-filled, stunning landscape shot every single time. Okay, so for the epic grand vista landscape photography images that I love shooting, you want the sun to be between 45 and 90 degrees to your subject. This is because when the sun is to the side of your subject, you're going to get an increased feeling of depth throughout the scene because you're creating a bright side and a dark side to your subject. Now, something amateur landscape photographers often forget is that the angle that the sun rises and sets throughout the year changes. So a location that gets perfect side light in October might not work at all in March because the sun is going to be rising or setting in a completely different position. The good news is that using the sun path tool inside the toolkit, you can see exactly where the sun is going to rise and set on the day that you're forecasting the conditions. And using the sun path tool is pretty easy. It's as easy as dragging a slider from left to right to see where the sun is going to be positioned in the sky. And speaking of the sun, if you're shooting in the mountains or near points of elevation, there's one final tool in the toolkit that's going to save you, and it saved me, hours and hours of waiting around for the right light to arrive. This next thing catches landscape photographers out all the time, and I've been caught out by this as well. Because unless you're shooting a completely flat scene, like maybe a seascape, and you're looking out to the ocean and there's a flat horizon, there's almost certainly going to be elements within the landscape you're shooting that's going to block the sun as it rises above that horizon line, whether it be hills, mountains, ridge lines, whatever it is. So even if the cloud is clear on the horizon and the sun angle is perfect to sidelight your shot and everything else seems to be lining up, if there's a bloody great big hill between where you are and the sun is rising, you're not going to get light on your foreground, and the subject at the same time, and your shot might be completely ruined. And that's why I built the shadows tool into the toolkit. So the shadows tool factors the height of the terrain around your shooting location, and it shows you when part of the scene that you're shooting is going to be in shadow and when it's going to be lit up, depending on the path and the height of the sun in the sky on that specific day. And this has been really helpful for me because I find that when I'm out shooting in places like the Lake District, it can take nearly an hour after sunrise for the sun to be high enough to get over the mountains to shine light on the foreground that I might be shooting, especially if you're shooting in a valley, for example, and you're shooting at a lake kind of scene, which is obviously what the Lake District is known for. So I use the shadows tool to predict when light is going to be hitting the foreground so I can get there at the right moment and more likely than not spend another hour in bed that morning so I'm not quite as tired as I go throughout the rest of the day. And when these 3 things line up, so clear horizons, the correct sun angle, and the shadows lifting on your subject, that's when you've got the best opportunity to capture the best photos of your life. And that is not it. Do you want to know the coolest thing about the toolkit? Well, if you don't want to do all of this stuff manually, you can press a single button and it will do all of these calculations for you. The toolkit will then share a photography specific forecast briefing for that specific location that you've run the report for. And this briefing takes into account everything I just ran through and a whole bunch more data sources and calculations, and it has context as to what you're actually shooting. Is it a lake? Is it a mountain? Whatever it is, it knows all of this. And so it can give you a clear plan of action as to when you should arrive at your location and what you should expect on the day. And that's pretty insane, right? And, well, it's one thing for me to say all this, it's quite another for me to prove that it all works. So, a couple of weeks ago, I had a window to go out and shoot. I opened the toolkit, I set the location to a spot that I knew had some potential, and I checked the sun position to make sure that I was going to get some nice side light. I then turned on the shadows tool to make sure that my foreground was going to remain lit and wouldn't be in shadow as the sun was setting. And finally, I checked the cloud horizon tool to make sure that there was going to be a gap at the horizon for the sun to break through the low cloud and the medium cloud layers so we get some beautiful light. It all looked pretty decent, so I drove over to the location, I walked up the hill, I got set up for the shot, and then I captured this photo. As you can see, the light appears as perfectly predicted. And then as I knew that there was still going to be a gap right at the bottom of the horizon at the very last minute that the sun was setting, I carried on walking to a second location and I grabbed another shot, and it was handheld this time. And this is a photo of a local war memorial in Yorkshire where I live. And, well, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Will, anyone can get lucky with their weather once. You might be thinking, how do I know that this is legitimate? Well, I've used the toolkit to forecast and then capture a bunch of amazing conditions over the past few weeks, and the forecasting has been perfect every single time. So just a few days after that previous shoot, I went to a local spot near me, this time for a sunrise. So to predict this, to do the forecasting, the night before the shoot, I used the sun path tool to make sure the sun was going to rise in the right location so I could capture it within my shot. I then forecasted the low clouds and the medium clouds to make sure that there was going to be a gap on the horizon for this sun to appear through with the cloud horizon tool. Then for good measure, with a single click, I ran the shot briefing tool to get a summary of the time and when I needed to get to the location and the forecasted conditions, which I then sent to my phone so I could take it along with me that next morning. It was a 5 a.m. start. I got to the location, I got myself set up, and I watched as the sun appeared over the horizon, absolutely as predicted, and I captured this image. And then a few days later, I did the same thing. I did some forecasting, I got out, I got set up, and I captured this image. And this is pretty incredible, right? The Photography Explained toolkit is going to do more for your landscape photography than any camera or lens upgrade is ever going to do. The toolkit is going to allow you to get more epic shots in less time with way less faffing around. And now you're probably saying to yourself, okay, Will, you big lanky idiot, how do I get my hands on this thing? Well, I'm giving completely free access to the toolkit, and we've only scratched the surface of what it actually can do in this video. I'm giving completely free access to the toolkit exclusively to all of the students in my Landscape Mastery program. So if you want to start leveraging the toolkit and also get 8 weeks of live classes with me personally, where I'm going to take you from where you are right now to creating professional level landscape photos that you can truly be proud of, click the link in the description to learn more. The students in Landscape Mastery, they're already using the toolkit to forecast and capture beautiful conditions, and you can do the same. So the old way of landscape photography was to spend years, maybe up to a decade, learning all of this field craft through trial, error, and missed opportunities. And the new way is to use the toolkits to do all of the hard work for you. But here is the thing, there is no point in forecasting the perfect conditions if you don't know what to do when you get there. You need to know how to compose a shot, how to capture it, and then how to bring it to life in the edit. So watch this video next. It takes you through the step-by-step process to compose, capture, and edit your landscape images in a way where when you show up with the perfect conditions, the whole image comes together beautifully.